I never thought a casual Sunday video call would be the moment my son cut me out of his life. But there I was, sitting at my kitchen table, holding my favorite teacup like it might shatter from my grip, as Daniel cleared his throat awkwardly on screen. "Mom," he said, with that too bright smile. "You've got a minute?" I smiled back, relieved. It had been weeks since we spoke properly. I thought maybe he was finally calling to share wedding details or ask me to help with something. I'd been making notes in my little book, ideas for Matthew's big day, a family recipe for the cake, the pearl necklace his grandfather gave me that I thought I'd pass down. But then Daniel's smile faltered. He cleared his throat. "Mom, listen, this isn't easy." My stomach tightened. "Go on," I said softly. He rubbed his neck, eyes darting away from the camera. "The kids, Allison, well, they all think it might be better if you didn't come to the wedding." The words didn't make sense at first. My brain refused to connect them into a sentence. "You're saying," my hand froze on my teacup, "I'm not invited to my own grandson's wedding?" His lips pressed together. He nodded once, quickly, like it would hurt less that way. "Mom, I'm sorry. It's not just me. Everyone insisted." The room seemed to tilt slightly. The air went heavy. My ears rang like I'd been slapped. 2 hours later, I was still sitting there, the tea stone cold in my cup. The video call replayed in my head like a bad recording. Daniel's awkward throat clearing. His wife Allison's name. Everyone insisted. Everyone except me, apparently. By the time night fell, my chest felt like it was splitting open. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there and thought about every school fee I'd ever paid for Matthew. Every time I'd stepped in when Daniel and Allison's business stumbled. And then my eyes landed on the old oak filing cabinet across the room. I got up slowly, my slippers silent against the hardwood floor. My fingers hovered over the drawer before pulling it open. There it was, a thick folder marked in neat block letters. Family Trust Fund. The trust they'd been living off for years without a second thought. My hands didn't shake this time. I pulled the folder out, laid it on the table, and flipped it open. "I'm so glad you're here. Stick with me until the end, and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story travels." "Mom, I know it sounds harsh, but Allison and Matthew, they're worried you'll make the day about you, that you'll get emotional." My chest tightened. "Emotional?" I asked. He sighed, like he was the one burdened. "You do have a tendency to get worked up, Mom. And this day is about Matthew and Lauren. We just want it to be peaceful." His words hit harder than if he'd shouted. Peaceful. As if my presence was inherently disruptive. As if after years of holding this family together, I'd somehow become the problem. "Don't you think I'd want the day to be perfect for him too?" I whispered. But he didn't answer that. I was still at the table, staring at the old folder labeled Family Trust Fund. The papers inside felt heavier than I remembered, as though they were lined with every sleepless night I'd spent worrying about Daniel's finances. I traced the signatures at the bottom of the documents, the same ones that gave me sole authority over every cent. They really didn't understand, did they? They didn't understand that Matthew's private school, his first car, even Allison's emergency renovations last spring, all of it came from here, from me. They'd built their lives on the foundation of my generosity, and now they thought I'd ruin a wedding by crying too loudly. That evening, I sat by the window watching the sky darken, clutching the folder like it was a lifeline. The house was painfully quiet, the kind of silence that settles into your bones. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Daniel. "Mom, I know this isn't easy. We'll still come see you after the honeymoon. Okay?" It felt like a slap dressed up as kindness, as if banning me from the wedding was a small inconvenience they could patch over later with a polite visit. The next morning, the doorbell rang. It was Jean, my oldest friend. I hadn't realized I'd been standing in the kitchen for nearly an hour, staring at the kettle as steam spiraled into the air. I opened the door to see Jean holding a grocery bag and flashing her usual wry smile. "Thought you could use some company," she said. We sat at the table, and I poured her tea with hands that didn't feel entirely steady. As the warmth seeped into the china cups, I told her everything. The video call. Daniel's words. Allison's smugness I'd heard even through the background laughter. Jean's brow furrowed deeper with every sentence. Margaret, that boy wouldn't even have this wedding if not for you. You bailed them out when they were drowning in debt 2 years ago, remember? Her words hit me like a stone. I did remember. Daniel had called one rainy night, his voice hoarse. Mom, we're about to lose the house. Allison's distraught. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I transferred $40,000 that same evening. No hesitation, no questions. That money had kept their roof intact, and not once had they mentioned paying it back. And now they were keeping me out of their celebrations, as though I were the problem. Jean reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You've given them everything, and they've taken it like it's their right. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Later, after Jean left, I decided to check my email. It had been days since I'd opened it. I couldn't face the stream of wedding updates from distant relatives. But tonight, something compelled me. At the top of the inbox sat a message from my lawyer. Subject, requested fund transfers. Matthew's wedding. My stomach turned. I clicked it open and began reading. The email detailed a series of transactions Daniel and Allison had already arranged with my lawyer's office. They hadn't even told me. An additional $50,000 request for final wedding expenses, venue upgrades, premium catering, a live band. At the bottom of the email, my breath caught as I read the words, request signed on behalf of Margaret Davies, primary trustee, signed on my behalf. I shot to my feet, the chair legs scraping against the floor. My first instinct was to grab my phone and call the lawyer, to demand answers, to stop this madness before they drained another cent. But I froze, mid-step. No, a cold, steady calm settled over me. If they'd been bold enough to plan this much without telling me, what else had they done? I wasn't going to storm in like a naive mother and let them twist my words into guilt. Not this time. If they wanted to see me as the villain, maybe it was time I played the part. The next morning, I walked into my lawyer's office. I sat across from Mr. Conway, watching him adjust his glasses as he skimmed the trust documents. Margaret, he began carefully, are you sure you want to do this? Freezing the fund, it's a big step. I didn't flinch. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He hesitated. It'll mean any pending payments will bounce. That includes the caterers, the florists, the premium champagne, I interrupted, my voice steady. Yes, I know. That's the point. For years, I'd been the quiet benefactor, the safety net, the one they never thanked but always expected. Not anymore. Conway nodded slowly and began typing. As of this moment, all withdrawals require your direct authorization. I'll also flag any requests made on your behalf for additional verification. Good, I said. And make sure they're notified if any transactions are attempted. Of course. It was done. With a few strokes of his keyboard, the trust fund, the lifeline they had built their lives around, was locked tighter than a bank vault. I left the office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The air outside was sharp and biting, but I didn't care. For the first time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground again. But as I crossed the street toward my car, my phone vibrated. A message from Daniel. Mom, can you wire the last payment to the caterer today? We're counting on it. Counting on me. Those words again. I unlocked my phone with deliberate slowness and stared at the text. The arrogance. The entitlement. The sheer audacity to assume I'd hand over more money after banning me from their lives. A second text came through before I could respond. It's urgent, Mom. They said they'll cancel if we don't pay by tonight. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. My lips curled into the faintest smile. They didn't know yet. They didn't know the trust was frozen. And they had no idea what was coming next. I stared at the screen after hitting send. Not approved. 2 words that would change everything. For a moment, the house felt unnaturally still. No creaking pipes, no hum from the refrigerator. Just me, sitting in the silence, gripping my teacup. Then the phone rang. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. It stopped. Started again. When I didn't pick up, it switched to Allison's number. By the fourth call, I pressed mute and placed the phone face down on the table. If they wanted my attention, they would have to wait. Minutes later, the first voicemail came through. "Mom, what's going on? The caterer says the payment didn't clear. We're on a deadline here. Just approve the transfer, okay? Don't make this into a thing." I didn't respond. A second voicemail followed almost immediately. This time, it was Allison. Her voice was sharp, dripping with accusation. "Margaret, you can't seriously be doing this. This is Matthew's wedding. He's your grandson, for God's sake. Do you want to ruin his big day?" I took a slow sip of tea. It was astonishing, really. The way they spoke to me. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just anger that their free ride had hit a wall. By the sixth voicemail, Allison had dropped the thin veneer of politeness. "You've done enough damage already. Maybe it's better you stay out of all our lives." Her words echoed in my head like a gunshot. Better if I stayed out? Was that what they truly wanted? I set the phone down and folded my hands in my lap, willing my fingers to stop trembling. I thought back to all the times I had said yes over the years. Yes to paying Matthew's tuition. Yes to covering Allison's emergency dental work. Yes to bailing them out when Daniel's business fell apart. Every time, I told myself I was keeping the family together. But now I could see the truth. Every yes had only taught them to take more. The phone buzzed again, another voicemail from Daniel. This one was quieter, his tone tight, with forced calm. "Mom, we can talk about this later. Just send the payment now, please. We're counting on you, counting on me, always counting on me." I turned the phone off. When I turned it back on an hour later, my screen was flooded with notifications. Dozens of messages in the family group chat. 72 new messages. I hadn't looked at the chat in months. It was mostly used for sharing photos and event updates, holiday dinners, baby announcements, trivial memes I never understood. But now, that same chat had become a battlefield, and I was the target. My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to throw the phone in a drawer and lock it away. But I needed to see. The first message was from Allison. Of course it was Allison. "Margaret, this is ridiculous. You can't just refuse the payment. Do you even understand what you're doing?" The words felt like claws. She hadn't even tried to sound kind. No softening, no acknowledgement of what she and Daniel had done. The next few messages came in rapid succession. "This is Matthew's wedding. Stop making it about you. You've embarrassed Daniel enough. It's pathetic." Each line was sharper than the last. Then Daniel chimed in, trying and failing to sound calm. "Mom, we all need to take a breath. This isn't the place for drama. Just approve the payment and we'll talk later." Talk later. The same Daniel who hadn't even invited me to the wedding. I scrolled further, my heart tightening as I saw Matthew's name. "Gran, if you're bitter about not being invited, fine. But don't ruin our wedding too." Bitter. That word slammed into me like ice water. I set the phone down, staring at it as if it were a venomous snake. They weren't angry because I'd frozen the trust. They were angry because I'd dared to take control. For years, I'd been invisible in this family unless they needed something. A bank account with a beating heart. And now that I'd drawn a boundary, they couldn't stand it. Another message flashed on the screen. Allison again. "If you really loved Matthew, you'd do the right thing. Stop this before it's too late. Do the right thing." I had done the right thing every day of my life. The sleepless nights caring for Daniel as a baby when his father worked double shifts. The extra jobs I took so Matthew could attend a school his parents couldn't afford. The $40,000 I wired 2 years ago to keep their house from foreclosure. And they dared to lecture me about love? I picked up the phone, my fingers steady now. As I scrolled through their accusations and half-baked guilt trips, I felt something unexpected. Calm, not rage, not sadness, just a still, icy certainty. They thought they were clever, that I would cave under pressure like I always had. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. My phone buzzed again, another flood of messages, but I didn't bother opening them this time. Instead, I opened my contacts and found the number I needed. The line rang twice before a cheerful voice answered. "Good afternoon, Blossom Hill Catering. How can I help you?" I took a slow breath, my voice even and cool. "This is Margaret Davies. I believe there's a pending payment for the Matthews wedding?" "Yes, ma'am," the woman replied warmly. "We're waiting on the final installment. It's due within 48 hours, or unfortunately, we'll have to cancel services." A faint smile tugged at my lips. "Thank you. That's all I needed to know." As I ended the call, the room felt different. The air seemed clearer, sharper somehow. They wanted their day to be peaceful. I murmured to myself, "Let's see how peaceful it feels when the whole thing crumbles." The sun rose early that morning, spilling gold across my kitchen tiles. I brewed my tea slowly, the kettle hissing in the stillness. Today was the day. Across town, their grand event would be in full swing by now. Hairdressers curling strands of Allison's perfect hair, Matthew tightening the cuffs of his tailored suit, Daniel smoothing down his lapels as though he'd planned it all himself. But I knew something they didn't. I carried my cup into the garden and sat in the wicker chair, the one I used to rock Daniel in when he was a baby. The roses were blooming, deep crimson, heavy with petals. I reached out and brushed one gently, careful not to catch a thorn. My phone lay silent beside me. Not a single message yet. It wouldn't stay quiet for long. At 10:43 a.m., the first call came. "Daniel." I let it ring until it stopped. Almost instantly, a second call followed, this time from an unknown number. I didn't answer. Instead, I tilted my face toward the sun, letting the warmth seep into my skin. By noon, the calls came faster, stacking on top of each other like a panicked heartbeat. Florist, photographer, the venue manager. Each one left voicemails that started polite but grew sharper, more frantic. "Mrs. Davies, we're unable to proceed without final payment. I've been trying to reach someone. Please call back immediately." I took another sip of tea. This was what they'd asked for, wasn't it? A peaceful wedding. The day without my drama. By mid-afternoon, my house was so still I could hear the faint ticking of the old clock in the hallway. I sat in my wicker chair, staring at the garden. The roses were heavy with petals, their deep red blooms almost black in the waning sunlight. I didn't need to be there to know what was happening across town. I could picture it clearly. The whispers, the sidelong glances, the heat of humiliation blooming on Daniel's and Allison's faces as their perfect day unraveled. At first, the guests probably didn't notice. They arrived in pastel dresses and tailored suits, clutching envelopes and gift bags, smiling for photos in front of the archway draped in white silk. Small talk filled the air as they sipped champagne, not knowing the bottle in their hands might be the last poured that day. Somewhere inside, Allison would be checking her makeup for the 10th time, forcing a smile as she asked Daniel why the band hadn't arrived yet. By 2:30 p.m., the first cracks began to show. A hush spread through the crowd as servers quietly packed up trays in the back, their voices low, movements brisk. The guests shifted uncomfortably, stealing glances at one another as murmurs began to ripple. "Did you hear? The caterer's staff just walked out. I thought I saw the florist leave too. Is there a problem with the payments?" Daniel would be pacing by now, his tie loosened, beads of sweat forming at his hairline. Allison's voice would have sharpened, cutting through the hushed chaos. "Call your mother, fix this. I told you she'd do something like this." And Matthew. I imagined him standing there in his perfectly pressed tuxedo, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to calm the storm. The boy I'd once cradled to sleep now faced a crowd of watching eyes, all silently asking the same question. What kind of family can't even hold a wedding together? By 3 p.m., the whispers had turned to open gossip. Weren't they bragging about how lavish this would be? I heard his grandmother's funding the whole thing. Maybe she pulled out? Do you think she found out about something? Every sentence would feel like a knife to Allison's carefully curated image. The guests weren't just witnesses anymore. They were vultures. At 4:15 p.m., Daniel's voice cracked through my voicemail. "Mom, please. People are leaving." Allison's crying in the bathroom. "Matthew, he's just standing there. I don't know what to do. They're all looking at us like we're pathetic. Pathetic. The word hung in the air like smoke. I pictured the scene as clearly as if I were there. The photographer quietly packing up his equipment. Aunt Linda, shaking her head in disapproval as she ushered her children back to their car. Uncle Robert whispering to his wife, "Maybe this is why Margaret didn't come." I'd be humiliated too. And, through it all, Matthew staring at the door, waiting for me to walk in and save him like I always had. But I wasn't coming. Not this time. By 5 p.m., the ballroom that was meant to hold a celebration now held only the bitter taste of failure. Half the guests had already slipped away, their goodbyes mumbled, their faces tight with discomfort. The ones who remained only stayed to watch the spectacle unfold. My phone vibrated again, dragging me back into the present. Daniel's voice was hoarse now, weighed down by something heavier than pride. "Mom, you win. You've made your point. Please don't do this. It's over. You're destroying us." The words came out broken, the sound of a man realizing too late the cost of his choices. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for my cold tea, swirling it once before setting it down again. This wasn't about winning. This was about finally being seen, not as their bank, their crutch, their afterthought, but as a person. They wanted a wedding without me, and that's exactly what I gave them. The knock came just after dark. It wasn't timid. It wasn't forceful. It was the knock of someone who didn't know what else to do. I stayed in my chair by the window, my fingers tracing the chipped edge of my teacup. Another knock. "Mom?" Daniel's voice. I didn't move. The doorbell rang next, sharp against the stillness of the house. "Mom, please, please, open the door." His voice cracked on the last word. I set my teacup down gently, the sound of porcelain against wood impossibly loud. Then, finally, I rose and walked to the door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, shoulders hunched, eyes red and swollen. He looked nothing like the man who had banned me from my own grandson's wedding. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He broke first. "Mom, I'm sorry. We were wrong. Allison, Matthew, me, all of us. We never should have treated you like that." His words tumbled out, clumsy and frantic. "Please, you've made your point. You're destroying us. The wedding, it's in ruins. Matthew won't speak to me. Allison's threatening to leave. Everything's falling apart." He stepped forward slightly, his hands trembling. "Mom, please, just fix it. Please fix this." I didn't flinch. "Fix it?" I said softly. His lips parted, but I didn't give him a chance to answer. "For decades, I fixed everything for you. Paid your debts. Raised your son when you were too busy building a life with Allison to even call me back. Funded every convenience you ever wanted. And in return, you banned me from my grandson's wedding like I was some embarrassing obligation." He swallowed hard, his face crumpling. "Do you know what it felt like?" I continued, my voice even, "to sit at this very table and hear my only child say, 'Everyone insisted'? To realize my presence in this family was so small, so disposable, you thought you could forge my name and take what was left of my generosity?" "Mom, don't," I said sharply. The word stopped him cold. Tears slid down his face as he sank to his knees on my doorstep. "I'm begging you. Please don't do this to us. We're family." I looked down at him, this man who once ran to me with scraped knees and tear-streaked cheeks, who now knelt here, broken, but not from love or regret, from loss. My voice was low, steady and colder than I ever thought I could sound. "You destroyed me the moment you banned me from my grandson's wedding." He looked up, stricken. "And now you're surprised I destroyed you back?" Daniel let out a sound, somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "Mom, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Please, we'll make it right. I'll make it right. Just don't cut us off." I shook my head slowly. "You're not listening, Daniel. There is no us anymore. Not until you understand the difference between love and convenience." I stepped back and placed my hand on the doorframe. "You should go home." "Mom, go home," I repeated, my tone final. His shoulders sagged as he wiped his face with shaking hands. Slowly, he rose to his feet and stumbled back down the steps. I closed the door gently behind me, not with anger, not with triumph, just with the quiet certainty of someone who had finally stopped begging to be loved. The next morning, I arrived at my lawyer's office just as the doors opened. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Mrs. Davies? We weren't expecting you." "I won't be long," I said. I didn't need an appointment. What I came to do couldn't wait. Mr. Conway ushered me into his office, his expression wary. "I've reviewed the trust documents as you asked," he began cautiously. "Are you sure you want to make these changes? Once they're in place, they stay in place," I cut in. His eyes flicked to the papers on his desk. "All right." For decades, I'd kept the trust in place for Daniel's sake, thinking it would give him security, thinking it would hold the family together. But all it had done was teach him how to take without gratitude. I wasn't going to let him do the same to Matthew. Not if there was even a chance to stop the cycle. "I want Daniel removed as a trustee effective immediately," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "Remove his access entirely. Freeze any pending requests." "And Matthew?" Mr. Conway asked carefully. I hesitated, not out of doubt, but to choose my words. "Matthew stays, but no direct access. He can earn what's left if, and only if, he proves himself to be different from his parents." Conway nodded, scribbling notes. "I'll draft the amendments right away. You'll need to sign before they take effect." "I'll sign them now." Pen in hand, I signed with a steady grip. Each stroke felt like a lock clicking into place. By the time I left the office, the sun had climbed high above the city skyline. It should have felt like freedom. Instead, there was only a quiet ache deep in my chest. Not regret, not guilt, just the heavy knowledge that something had ended. When I returned home, the air inside felt still, almost too still. I set my handbag on the table and sank into the armchair by the window. For years, I'd dreamed of Daniel coming to his senses, of Matthew bridging the gap between us. But dreams don't hold families together. Choices do. And they had all made theirs. The phone buzzed on the table beside me. Daniel's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring. Moments later, a text appeared. "You've ruined us." I stared at the words for a long moment before typing my reply. "No, Daniel, you ruined yourselves." Then I set the phone down and closed my eyes. A week later, I sat across from Mr. Conway one last time. The paperwork was stacked neatly on his polished oak desk, a thick pile of signatures and amendments that felt heavier than any document I'd ever signed before. He slid the final form toward me. "This will complete the transfer, Mrs. Davies. Half the trust to the charitable foundation, and the remainder placed in a scholarship fund under Richard's name." I took the pen without hesitation. "Let's finish it." As the ink dried, a strange lightness settled over my chest. For decades, that trust had been a tether, first to Richard's memory, then to Daniel and his endless demands. Now it would mean something different, something better. I imagined the students who would one day receive those scholarships, young people with no family safety net, people who might actually understand what a gift it was. Conway cleared his throat. "You're certain about this, Mrs. Davies? Once it's filed, there's no reversing it." "I'm certain," I said firmly. By the time I stepped outside, the morning sun was already high, warm against my face. The air smelled like spring. For the first time in years, I felt no weight pulling at my shoulders, no fear of what Daniel or Allison might say, no ache for Matthew's approval, just silence and peace. As I walked down the steps of the building, my phone buzzed in my handbag. I ignored it until I reached the car. When I finally checked the screen, a single message waited for me. "Matthew, I understand now, Gran. I'm so sorry." I stared at the words for a long moment. There it was, the apology I thought I wanted all along. But now, seeing it in black and white, I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction, just a quiet certainty that it had come too late. I hovered over the screen, my finger lingering on the reply button. But in the end, I didn't write back. Instead, I swiped left and pressed delete. As I slid the phone back into my bag, I whispered to myself, I hope one day he means it. And then I stepped out into the sunlight. For the first time in years, the world felt like it belonged to me again.